Welcome back to the 10th episode of our MyTeam F1 series. Now, we are in the Belgian Grand Prix, and this is one of my favorite tracks. So, I'm hoping we can get a good result as we head into qualifying. And here we are around Blanchimont, and we're doing pretty well. We have 2 green sectors and right now, and as we head into the last couple of corners, and we go straight for the finish line instead of following the racing line, and we get provisional pole with a 44.063. That's not bad. That is definitely not bad. Now, you just have to wait to see what we get, and we get P2. With being 600ths of a second behind Verstappen, and damn, that top 3 is close. And now, we're at Q2, back in Blanchimont. We are going to set the time for Q2 to see if we can repeat that Q1 speed and pace. But here we go. Last corner is the finish line. We get provisional pole again with a 43.4. That is not bad, if you ask me. So, we just have to wait and see, and we get provisional pole for Q2, which isn't bad. And we see Oscar Piastri being P15. That's not bad, especially with where our car is. So, no complaints over here. And in Q3, we go for our first run in scrub tires, just because we want to save time, since we use 2 tires in Q2. But here we are on the last corner. We go straight for the finish line. Where do we end up? We end up P6. P6 on scrub tires. Not bad, if you ask me. I mean, assuming that everyone else used new tires. But here we go. On our second run in Q3, we got the purple sector 1, green sector 2. And as we approach the final 2 corners, we wait to see what we get as we are improving by 6 tenths, almost 7 tenths from our first lap. And we get P1. We get P1 in qualifying. So we get to start at the front of the grid for the sprint race tomorrow. And we only edged Leclerc by 400ths of a second, Sainz by a tenth, and then Verstappen and Russell by 2 tenths. Oh my god. We're gonna have a close race right here.
Welcome to today's sprint. This is shaping up to be another fantastic weekend. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting sprint. Roberts lines up on pole position, with Charles Leclerc alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Verstappen, Russell, Perez, Hamilton, Gasly, Ocon, Norris, Fernando Alonso, Joe, Hulkenberg, Bottas, Oscar Piastri, Magnussen, Albon, Sonoda, Sargent, Stroll, Liam Lawson, and Nick De Vries. And with preparations almost complete, let's head trackside for today's sprint.
And the 5 lights are out. We get a good start right here, and as we approach turn 1, we expect a bit of carnage, and we already see some carnage happening. Leclerc loses 2 positions as Sainz and Verstappen overtake him after turn 1. And we saw, if you guys were looking at the standings on the left, we saw a lot of position changes just after turn 1. And with the different tire usage of each car, we see that I feel like a lot of the medium runners are losing ground a bit, and as you see here, the fight between Verstappen and Sainz, Verstappen does get the better of Sainz because he is on softs, thus he has better grip on those tires. So I feel like Red Bull might have called the right strategy here. I honestly went for medium tires because I don't have faith to make those soft tires last 5 laps, especially here in Spa. Like, Spa will always be a track where, in my opinion, using soft tires might be a bit overdoing it, but then also at the same time, our cars doesn't have the best tire wear. So if we went on sauce, we would have probably start having grip issues by like lap. Maybe I wouldn't say lap 3, maybe lap 4. So that's my hope right now, that hopefully RB Verstappen burns through his soft tires before, by 4 or heck even 3 if I'm being overly optimistic, so that my medium tire selection would have been worth it. But as we see here, we are kind of gapping Verstappen a bit, but then also at the same time, I know we've been using a bit of ERS on the straights because we know this RB is fast in the straights, and the only time we're really able to make a really, really big gap is within these this middle sector, but it has a bit more twists and turns, so we definitely could make that work. But right now it's just really trying to keep that 1 second gap alive, at least enough to, as we get into the 3rd lap, whenever DRS is activated, we are not in DRS range of Verstappen, because once we are, we know we're gonna be screwed, because that Red Bull will just fly past us and start sailing off into the sunset. But as we approach the last couple of corners of the 2nd lap and we get to lap number 3, DRS is activated. As you can see, we are trying to push hard out, especially after turn 2, because we know the DRS detection zone is going to be at the bottom of Eau Rouge. And as we get past the DRS detection zone, we are 1.3 seconds clear of Verstappen, so we live to drive another day, or another lap in this case, as Verstappen doesn't have DRS, but every other car behind him does. Maybe except Leclerc, but you know what I mean. Sainz, Perez both have DRS, thus giving them a chance to be able to hound Verstappen, and Verstappen having to play defense instead of catch up for us. So this should technically, assuming everything works fine, this should technically allow us to sail off into the sunset in this race. And it's, if we're able to, if Sainz, mostly Sainz, because Sainz is the one behind Verstappen, like if Sainz is able to keep close to Verstappen and prevent Verstappen to keep catch up, I think like this is, this would be a perfect start to our weekend, because we already got pole on qualifying, and if we drive really well, barring any issues, I feel like this would be the perfect start to a weekend, in my opinion. Qualify first, win the sprint race thanks to the help of Sainz, and the only thing left is actually win the race, and then we'll have a grand slam of a weekend. Plus it's Spa is my favorite, one of my favorite tracks. maybe outside of the corners after this straight, then yes, it's one of my favorite tracks. It's also a fun track to drive, in my opinion, assuming that you don't eat too much curb and spin. But that was a problem last year's game, not this year's game. So it's definitely more fun to drive here in Spa. But lap number 4, we're in the second sector. We see Verstappen. We're able to kind of keep the gap on Verstappen, as Sainz and Perez can't really get close to Verstappen that much. Like you see Sainz does get close, like here in the middle sectors, but we don't see him, be able to catch up that much on the straights, as he's like Sainz seems to have slow acceleration outside of a slow exit out of slow corners, because when he gets close in the DRS straight after Eau Rouge, but this DRS straight here, especially for the few laps, he sees 2/10, then it suddenly goes to 3, and it gets to somewhat to 4. So he basically loses 2/10 out of that. And then here in turn 1, he gets to somewhere around 4/10, and then that 4/10 turns into 5, turns into almost 6. There you go. It turns to 6, and then it goes to nearly 6.5. It almost goes to 7/10, and then that's already that's enough of a gap that even with DRS, it will be hard to catch up with someone in a DRS straight, not unless that DRS straight is as long as Baku or Monza kind of thing. So you kind of see Sainz only gains 4/10 on that straight. So it's kind of I did want to see Sainz and Verstappen kind of tussling more for position, but we know that this RB is fast on straight line without DRS. And if anything from last year's race in Spa showed us, is that this RB is fast in a straight line, even if Ferrari with the DRS and within 0.6 of a second, they still can't overtake that RB. That RB is just fast and not very draggy. So I guess it shows today that it's still the same, because Sainz can't get really close. This is the closest Sainz has ever been. He's a 10th, but I don't think he'll be able to make a move as we head into the last corner. Nope. And from there, we win this Belgian Grand Prix. I mean, we win the sprint race, there you go, of the Belgian Grand Prix. So this kind of sets us up for first place in the race tomorrow.
Welcome to this visit to the Ardennes countryside. Spa-Francorchamps hosted its first Grand Prix back in 1925, and this historic track is loved by drivers and fans alike, and us here in the commentary box too. So it's a warm welcome from the Belgian Grand Prix. Spa-Francorchamps then, a historic 19-corner circuit with a lap distance of 4.35 miles. There's over 100 meters of elevation change here, and with long stretches of the lap spent flat out, a good top speed will be vital for success. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Roberts lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Sainz, Perez, Leclerc, Russell, Ocon, Hamilton, Gasly, Norris, Fernando Alonso, Joe, Oscar Piastri, Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Albon, Liam Lawson, Tsunoda, Sargent, Stroll, De Vries, and Valtteri Bottas begins the race from the back of the grid. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. And it's an absolute pleasure to be joined once more by Anthony Davidson. The last few races have been a bit rough for them, unable to get a clean run. That's got to have some effect on their confidence, surely.
It's not an ideal situation by any means. When you get into a bad run like that, there's always a risk of frustration creeping in, which can cause more mistakes and locks you into this vicious cycle. Hopefully today they can get through turn 1 cleanly and stay calm for the rest of the race.
And the 5 lights are out. We get a good start. Sainz has a slow start. Sainz has a really bad start as he falls down all the way to 6th. Even before turn 1, he had this very slow exit. And just like we saw in the sprint race, on the left, on the standings, we see a lot of cars losing positions, a lot of cars moving up in position. And that just, it's always a crazy turn 1 here in Spa. But we got ourselves a really good exit. We have a 6/10 gap on Verstappen. Now, if the sprint race has anything taught us anything, is that once Verstappen's being hounded, we'll have to go on defense instead of, playing catch up. And we kind of see that Verstappen is on softs again. I don't know how many softs the Red Bull has, but that's a lot of softs right there. So we have both RBs on softs right here. Leclerc is on softs as well. So Russell as well. That explains why Sainz dropped so much. I feel like he had a decent or not much of a good start, and he's on medium, so he doesn't have that much grip off the line compared to the other soft runners that were around him. And you can see here, Sainz is already being hounded by Hamilton, so that's just rough right there. And you kind of see here, I feel like we made an error, as now Verstappen is within 4/10 while we were like around 7/10 earlier. So I feel like we made the mistake there on the last couple of corners to the start of the track. And then here we go up to Eau Rouge, use a bit of ERS just to create a bit more of a gap, use a bit more ERS here. But you could see the slipstream effect and how fast that Red Bull is in a straight line. Just it kind of makes it hard to make a gap. The only reason why we were able to make a gap in the first place during the sprint was that Sainz was already hounding Verstappen, and now here we are kind of realizing we're on lap 2, we're in the second sector of lap 2. We need to get that gap over a second, or else Verstappen will have DRS and has the free reign to just slingshot past us and sail off into the sunset. So we are going to try the same strategy we had in the sprint race, to where we will try to get out of DRS range from Verstappen. But that doesn't, as we were because we're heading to the last few corners of this track, and we're still like 8.5 tenths gap with Verstappen. So that's not good. But good thing there's no DRS here yet on the front straight. And now we are able to get the gap up to a second after turn 1. So that's a good sign for us, and we get it to 1.2 seconds. I think we can get it to 1.3, and as we pass the DRS detection zone, we have a 1.3 second gap, and we are out of DRS range. And now Verstappen will get hounded by his fellow. Oh, smoke is coming out from the back of their car, and that is a race over. The Mercedes engine failure has finally caught up with us, and that is just race over there. That's so unfortunate. It was about time when our engine failure will catch up to us, and that's just very unfortunate. When I did look at the engine component screen, it was our control electronics, which had 32% wear, completely failed.
Win for Mercedes. What do you think it was today, Ans, that gave them the edge over the competition?
I feel like consistency was probably the key today. There's being quick, and then there's being quick lap after lap after lap. If you can do that, you can capitalise on other people's errors without making many of your own. And that's an approach that can push you a long way up the field.
While Mercedes are on top form once again after an excellent race weekend, it's great to see them up on that podium once again.
So I think I'm actually surprised that 32% of control electronics would fail. It's unfortunate. I think it's just unlucky, but I feel like maybe I might, like, in the future, I need to probably change my control electronics once it gets to 30, I would say. Assuming that, you know, since it crashed on 32, I feel like maybe it was RNG, maybe it wasn't, but that was just unfortunate, and it was just about time where the Mercedes engine caught up to us. But yeah, it's a short episode because we did DNF because of engine failure. But hey, there's nothing I could do about that. But Spa would have been fun to drive. No, honestly, I'm a little bit more disappointed because it's Spa. It's one of my favorite tracks. I would have been okay to DNF to have this engine failure at another track, but just not Spa, man. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this very short episode of our F1 MyTeam series. If you did like this very short video, please like and subscribe and leave down on the comments on what you guys thoughts are on, like, or your experiences so far with the Mercedes engine, because I've had so many Mercedes engine issues in this save that I expected from a Ferrari, not from a Merc. But anyways, I'll see you guys all the next time. This is Banger 12. Signing out.